Hey guys, so this is Chris with Drop Dice. I am back again. As it turns out, I finally rubbed enough virgin blood all over my computer for it to work better than it did at the last place. So, if you guys have been following my channel, you know that my power supply, my video card were giving me issues because the outlets inside that house were bad. I am now in a new house. My power supply has been reinstalled along with my video card. I've got my hard drive up and running, obviously, since the computer is working enough for me to make videos, and the computer is running great, so that is awesome. But what we're here for is RPGA Day 2016, days 17 through 27. Now I'm about to transition. You can see my office. It's kind of in shambles right now because I haven't put everything up. I do have a painting that's on this wall, but you can't actually see it, this wall, just because it's too far over. It is the painting that was on my wall before. There you guys go. And there's kind of my mess because I'm still going through everything. I'll have more paintings and things like that to put up, and I'll have better lights in here eventually. So kind of bear with the bad lighting for the moment just because we're still getting things unpacked. Now, this is RPGA Day 2017. This video probably will, or excuse me, 2016, and this video will probably run a little bit longer than normal, so just kind of bear with me here, just like the last couple videos. So starting with the 17th is what fictional character would best fit in your group. The person I selected would be B.B. Rodriguez, and for those of you who are not in the know, that is Bender Bending Rodriguez from Futurama. Specifically because his sense of humor matches up with us. We quote Futurama pretty regularly on the channel. We just generally really like the show. It's a lot of fun. Plus, there was the episode where Bender played as Titanius Anglesmith, the fancy man of Cornwall, who was a knight. And I think that Bender caught the RPG bug there, and he would make a great addition to any group that has to traverse through the cave of hopelessness. With that said, let's jump right into 18 here. 18 is what innovation could RPGs benefit most from? And I think it's not really an innovation, but I think it's more development. I think VR stands a really good chance of changing how we play the game. Like, I think it would be really cool to have virtual space that, while wearing the Samsung Gear or whatever VR system you use, you could look around and you'd see, oh look, there's Murdoch, oh look, there's Jeremy, and there's a table in front of us, and there's a mini map, and there's actual terrain, and we can move characters, and it would feel like being at a table instead of playing a game that is kind of a simulated adventure, which there's a lot of that right now. I would love to see like a good clean video system that works that well. For a while I had thought about doing something like Google Glass, where you could look through the camera and show them what you're seeing, and then you can see them, kind of thing. But it just doesn't really make a lot of sense either. I think that ultimately it's going to have to be like a VR rig type setup, which I think could really change how we play games, especially if we did like a full rig setup and got to explore these worlds as a person, not just as a player, or as a player character rather. 19 is best way to learn a new game. The best way to learn a new game, hands down, is to make a character. During the process of making a character, whenever you see a stat or something that doesn't seem very obvious, like if you read strength, I assume you probably already know what that is. However, if you read armor class and you've never played a game with armor class, you would probably look that up. So I think that's really the best way to learn a game, is that you look up anything that you don't immediately know an answer to. You also should look up things like derived calculations and learn how those work during that process. And usually you learn the very basics of combat because you're like, oh, okay, I've got a bonus to hit. What does that mean? What am I rolling to hit? And you kind of answer those questions as you character build. So I think that's really the best way to really learn a system, is read a little bit of that lore and then jump right into character building. If you plan to run the game, read more of the lore after building a character, but you should build at least 2 characters to really get a handle on the game. The best recommendation I can say about building characters is build the character that you always like playing. For me, I like playing martial artists. So anytime I get a game, I build a martial artist, and usually 9 times out of 10 I'm disappointed because games usually don't give martial artists a whole lot of love anyways. So then I turn around and make a rogue, which is kind of my number 2 spot. I like doing rogues. My favorite class is actually a mage, but I don't like to play them unless it's a campaign, so I don't really play a lot of mages, which is kind of weird. I end up playing a lot more fighters and stuff, which I have a lot of fun with. It's just in a campaign, I really like being the wizard or the sorcerer, or whatever the case may be. Which everybody has their preferences. I'm sure that some of the viewers are thinking that they like something like that, but maybe the other way around. So let's see. Number 20 was most challenging but rewarding system you've learned. I would say Palladium. Palladium systems are very crunchy, very detail orientated. There's lots of charts, lots of different calculations that go into it, but once your character is built, it is a very fulfilling game. And more recently, another one that I ran into that I had a problem with initially was Savage Kingdoms, because Savage Kingdoms is kind of crunchy on the character creation side. Not like, I would say it's like mid to high crunch, like just barely above that mid level. But in game, once you have all the calculations done, it's great. It flows very smooth. It just takes a little while to build a character, and I think the more you play Savage Kingdoms, the easier that becomes, just like any other game. So I don't think it's going to be a big deal in the end. Funniest misinterpretation of a rule in your group. I don't think we've had a whole lot of rule misinterpretations that have ended funny. Usually what ends up happening is if we have misinterpretation of the rule, what happens is the GM on the spot makes a call about what that rule is supposed to mean, and then we move on. We look it up after the game is over or during a break, resolve how that rule should have been done, and then we carry on. I find that that's the best way for us to continue the fiction, stay in the game, and push forward the story. So yeah, I can't think of any like funny times that it's happened. I can think of a ton of grappling issues with 3.5 or attacks of opportunity or stuff like that, because 3.5 had weird loopholes in it and like wording was off and stuff like that. So I can think of a lot of times where there was arguments at the table during a break, where people were debating how a grapple should have been carried out or something like that. Supposedly random events that keep reoccurring in your games. Not world building, but kingdom building. My guys that you guys see in L5R have a habit of getting themselves into a political situation that they can build their own kingdom, have their own army, and conquer the world. It's fun, but at the same time, I don't like it because it's like every game boils down to it. It's save the world, but to save the world, we need an army. And I don't like that as the default answer. I mean, it's very realistic, but I don't really like it because sometimes I just want to do a classy high fantasy adventure where the four of you are the destined heroes and you're going to save the world. You don't need an army at your back. So that would probably be that. The 23rd, share one of your best worst luck stories. So I think this one goes to Tom. He's the gold medalist on this one. Tom ran a Shadowrun 4th edition game. He's actually still running it. I think he's been running that game for almost 2 years now. It's been very long. I made a character that was a Minotaur, and he was just this diesel tank. Like, nothing could take him down. To give you an idea, a normal character has a defensive dice pool of about 20. There's a little bit of fluctuation, and when I say a little bit, I mean 15 to 25 is pretty average for a normal character in Shadowrun 4th edition. My character was built like a min-max champion, and he had 46 dice when he was caught unaware of the situation for his defense. And there's 2 defensive stats for 4th edition Shadowrun, but I don't really want to get into a whole lot of details. But 46 was the lowest of the 2. And if he was aware of the situation, he could actually make himself more defensible, and if I remember right, he could get himself up to like 54, 56, somewhere in there. Well, we were robbing Fort Knox, which I can hear some of you laughing hysterically at us right now. That is the best answer. Fort Knox is terrible to rob if you were to do it nowadays. In Shadowrun, it is like walking stupidly into a place that says, hey, we're full of landmines, just step on any on your way. So we go in there, and one of the defensive measures that they have is a character that the GM, Tom, put together as a foil for my character, who he codenamed Power Troll. Power Troll came through walls like a claymore bomb and hit you with about the same amount of force. Tanks could actually shoot me, and usually I could hold up to at least one, maybe two shots from a tank. Power Troll hit me in the face, and I collapsed because he got such a good roll, and I got such a poor defensive roll that I was just completely knocked on my ass, and the party didn't know what the hell to do with Power Troll, because if he put me down, there's no way that they can deal with him. And it was pretty hilarious. They did get me out, and we did end up getting healed up, and we got out of Fort Knox, but it was just a nightmare doing so. Let's see, the 24th, what game are you most likely to give to others? I think the game I'm most likely to give to someone for a gift would probably be Dungeon World, simply because it's a very easy game. It focuses on the fiction, which I think is the most important thing about role-playing games, and it teaches good player and GM habits. And so it's a gift for them, but in a way it's also a gift for me, because anybody who I give or encourage to try Dungeon World usually starts playing in a manner that I like a little better. So to me, it's really just kind of a gift for myself. So 25th, what makes for a good character? I think what makes a good character for me in a game is exactly what makes a good character in a TV show: consistency. The internal consistency of a character, to be able to cite back on his background and it makes sense 5 episodes later as when they introduced it earlier. I think for me, the biggest problem I have is when there's too much character growth, or growth happens too quickly or without reason. Characters need to evolve in such a way that makes sense. Say I'm playing a character like the crab I'm playing for the drop-in, drop-out game, and he's been a little bit more social because he's been put in these awkward situations where a crab who's not the most social has to work and has to push and has to get past the fact that he's dishonored. Because of that, I took some skill ranks in Courtier. And I think that was probably the best place to put my skill ranks because it best reflected how I played the game. And I love when players do that. I think that makes a great character. What hobbies go well with RPGs? So this one, I think there's a lot of hobbies that can go well and complement RPGs for you to get an idea of how it works both in the real world and in a game. I'm a big fan of archery. My friends all know that. I've got my bow actually inside the closet, which is over there. And I think it gives me a certain appreciation for archers in game, but it also makes me a little bit weary about things that we do in game that aren't very realistic. But when you get down the path of learning what something that your RPG character can do, you have to remind yourself that it's game, it's not real. Some of this stuff is like world-class Olympic athletes can't shoot arrows as fast as a character can in D&D 3, because if you took the right chain of feats in 3, you could shoot something like an entire quiver every round. It was ridiculous. Which, if you think about it, that's 6 seconds for 20 arrows. That's like well beyond the craziest trick shooter ever. So I think that those hobbies go well to teach you a little bit about the game. And I think some other hobbies like puzzles, brain teasers, doing paintings, art, and things like that in general, singing songs, any sort of creative outlet or things that get your brain working also pair really well with RPGs, because I'll find myself kind of spiraling outwardly. So if I'm working on a painting and while I'm working I see this kind of interesting shape, that may give me an idea for a monster, or it may give me an idea for an adventure, or it may give me an idea for an NPC. And then that NPC could give me a great idea that I can wrap back around into my next piece of art, or into a riddle that I can use later on. So I work kind of in this weird tangent kind of thought process, and it works well for me. Most unusual circumstance or location that you've gamed. Now, this is the 27th. At the time of filming, this is the 26th. I'm super late to everything, so I figured I'd get a jump start, since I probably won't do this again until at least the 31st, if not the 1st, because, again, I'm late to everything. Most unusual circumstance or location in which you've gamed. So, this one was not unusual or strange at all to me at the time, but I since have learned an appreciation for it, because I'm one of the few people that can say that they've done this. And the most unusual gaming location that I've ever done is at a undisclosed depth on board the USS Hartford, which is a U.S. naval submarine. We were out on deployment, and our depth varies throughout deployment, but we used to have a game that would show up after every third or fourth watch, which on a submarine you do 18-hour days, so you'd have one every couple days basically. And that was a really unique location, which I didn't think was all that unusual because it never occurred to us. We were like, oh, we're on deployment, but we still want to play games. So we did it anyways. Sorry about that. So we did it anyways, and it was a lot of fun. And now that I can kind of step back and appreciate that, it's something that I can say that I've done that not a lot of people have. Now, if you've been watching RPG A Day and you've been following along, I do encourage you to share a link to your own videos to the hashtag RPG A Day. They do group these things up. It does go back to the RPG Brigade, who will be hosting Brigade Con this year, just like they do every other year, which helps benefit Child's Play. So if you have enjoyed this video series and you'd like to be able to help out with a great organization, check out brigadecon.org. On there you can register so that you can play games or get involved and run games. You can also purchase t-shirts or make donations directly to Child's Play. 100% of the profits do go to assist them. And I do encourage anyone who's interested in RPGs that doesn't know really where to start to go ahead and start there. The guys that you'll meet on RPG A Day are going to quickly turn into some of your best friends on the internet here. With that said, as always, guys, feel free to share, comment, subscribe, and just keep going with your own creativity and what you're doing. As always, I will see you guys at the gaming table.